third installment of the Voices of Rondo podcast here at the HSRA studio. We've got two co-hosts today.
My name is Moises. I go to Brooklyn Center High School, and very excited for this episode of the podcast.
Yeah, me too. And we also have a special guest joining us in the studio. Pierre, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yo, what's poppin'? My name is Pierre Fulford, artist, activist, minister, all things community. Yeah.
Awesome. Great. We're so excited to be talking with you. And we are going to take this podcast in a historical direction to start, I think. We're going to start off with some history of discrimination throughout the country, and then focus in on the Rondo neighborhood here. And we're also going to take a look later on at another specific example of a community that was affected by a highway. This one was in Detroit, in the Black Bottom neighborhood. And we're going to bring on another guest to talk a little bit more about his experiences in Detroit and in Rondo. And so, yeah, we're so excited to have you guys here. And it's going to be great.
So we've done research as a youth council on the Bloomberg article. And this article covers the many cities that were affected, including Detroit and St. Paul. And there's other cities, Cincinnati, Miami, Houston.
Yeah, Chattanooga.
Rondo was the first one on there because that really highlights the effect of the highway on here. But we're going to talk about that later. But first, we need to make this parallel and similarity that the massacres that happened in Jim Crow in Tulsa and in Wilmington, the ends were the same. Mm-hmm. Many people were displaced, economic devastation. So let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, so we have been looking at other examples of how African American communities have been displaced, like Moises said, and affected. Yeah. And we've looked at ways that the government has played a role in that, and also that other just individuals or communities have played a role in that. Like white communities have kind of inflicted this violence on African Americans. And so we're going to start off, I think, with the Wilmington Massacre.
Yeah, Wilmington, North Carolina, not Delaware. It was the only coup d'etat that happened in the United States. It was done by a white mob who were upset that the Black population were actually gaining political power because, the majority of the city was African American at that time. So they literally just overthrew the Black government, the Black city government. And many homes were destroyed. I think 60 to 100 people died, and thousands were displaced. And that changed the demographics, forever. Still affects it to this day.
Yeah. And a similar example, which I think most people will have heard of, is the Tulsa Race Riots and the massacre there in 1921, which was a similar phenomenon of this white mob kind of coming into this black neighborhood that was, known as Black Wall Street, this very prosperous neighborhood, and just destroying everything. And basically there was extreme damage. I think up to 300 deaths were reported, and also just the generational loss is, incalculable, really. They said that on the spot, $30 to $45 million of property was destroyed. And then how do you rebuild from that? Well, it's very hard to. And after that, there were attempts to rebuild. And no, it did rebuild. It did, right. It got renewed. It was a revival of the community. There was a revival, and then guess what happened in 1975? What happened? They built a highway. The government funded a highway program to be built right down through the middle of Tulsa. 1975, and they named it the MLK Highway. Because that makes it better. Yeah. So, there's this pattern that's repeating itself. We know here in Rondo, they built this highway down right through the center of Rondo. They did it in Tulsa, too. This is a story that I think I had never heard before. I didn't know that. I didn't know. Tulsa was destroyed twice. Yeah. It was destroyed twice.
I got a question. So they gave the highway a name in Tulsa.
Yes. Martin Luther King Memorial Expressway.
But they didn't give the highway a name in
No,
Rondo.
That's true. They didn't.
That's true. sad.
Yeah.
At least Tulsa got a name.
Right. Yeah. It destroyed the community.
They destroyed the community.
But they get a highway with a name.
With a name.
Yeah.
It's horrible. And then they picked an historical figure, someone that's really near and dear to our hearts.
Yeah. Because I'm sure MLK will like that.
Yeah.
He'll like that highway being
MLK
there.
destroyed our community. That's literally is horrible.
Oh, I think, didn't they have Rondo Avenue running right down beside the highway? And then they renamed it Concordia Avenue after they built the highway through. So it's Concordia, like everything's like harmonious and going great.
Yeah.
After they like built the highway down. So it's like they named it. They've got their issues with the
Who's
name.
behind these names? They're a great person.
Yeah. They're very creative with their names. Yeah. So I think in 2021, Tulsa received a grant of $1 billion in reconnecting.
This was like, I think, the federal program that was passed under the administration, the presidential administration, to help reconnect communities. And it was going to be distributed, and it was, throughout the country.
What year was that again?
That was 2021, I think. This was, yeah.
So now they're finally feeling bad.
Yeah, they say it.
A little bit.
At least they're, yeah, exactly.
After 50 years.
That's what they say.
Yeah. Who's president then?
That's Biden.
Yeah, Biden. Yeah, Biden's still president.
He's still the guy? Okay.
Yeah, no, he's still going.
Okay, we're good.
But,
and so, one of these neighborhoods was Tulsa. And there are places across the country that obviously want to deal with these highways and want them out, basically.
Yeah.
Or want to re-envision what they can do around the highways and reconnect the communities. And this is exactly what is going on here in Rondo with the land bridge and the entire Reconnect Rondo organization trying to build this African-American cultural enterprise district and reconnect the community.
So, Pierre, what do you think about the Reconnect Rondo project?
I think it's needed, right? I think we got to make some attempt at reconnection. Long overdue, maybe.
Yeah,
even.
about like what, 60 years, I think?
A lot of decades, just some decades, that's all.
Yeah.
So I'm glad there is an effort in the right direction to reconcile a very devastating reality. So yeah, I think it's overdue, decades in the making, but at least there's an attempt in the right direction.
We're talking about these cities, right? And like these highways going through them. But why were these highways built? Like, what made this legal? Because like what we talked about with the Wilmington Massacre, the Tulsa Massacre, that was illegal, right? That was murder,
right? Property damage,
but
a lot of property damage.
A lot of like millions of dollars.
Somebody got paid.
Somebody, yeah. But so why were these highways built?
Right, because the highways were legal, and there was a federal act passed, I think, in 1956.
Yeah, the National Interstate and Defense Highways Act.
Right.
It was championed by the president at the time, Eisenhower. He wanted to connect cities across the nation so it can, cut times and all that.
Something about this act is it was passed unanimously.
By both chambers of Congress. We don't see that nowadays, right? But
Oh no, we don't. So they knew what their priorities were.
Yeah.
Build these highways.
Yes.
Right. Where do they end up going through? I mean, places like Rondo.
Now, a cool fun fact: Eisenhower, was a big champion of this. He was troubled. He was troubled by the highways going through
conscience.
Urban areas because he wanted them to go around them, like little rings. But he was troubled by the cost of building them into urban areas.
Of course.
So not the
effects.
Not the effects.
He was troubled by the cost.
The cost.
Yeah, he didn't mention anything about the effects on the people.
Yeah, man.
Which he has his priorities right.
Yeah. What a guy.
Yeah, and this caused suburbanization and urban renewal, and we have a video called "The Road to Prosperity" because when the highways were being built, there was a promotional campaign being done by the government to promote these. So we have a clip of that, and here it is.
I think that the urban renewal program possibly was prompted partially because of the interstate system.
Urban renewal prompted because of the interstate system. Mr. Edwards was, of course, speaking about Kansas City. But the same thing could be said for almost every city and town in our country. The masses of earth, steel, and concrete that are being moved and molded to build the interstate system are setting up waves of movement in all our urban areas. New jobs for the construction workers, increased production for industries that supply them, tenement neighborhoods and blighted commercial districts replaced by modern communities, all bringing a new face to the American cityscape. The new highways, with access ramps, connecting loops, and feeder streets, are being integrated into total transportation plans for urban areas. It is happening in Hartford and Chicago, Minneapolis and San Francisco, Kansas City and New York City. Where the roads go, new buildings follow. In Chicago, tenements are being replaced by modern low-cost apartments on land adjacent to high-speed freeways. In New York City...
All right, so that was the video.
Yeah, we know that there were a lot of lies in there.
Yeah.
At least some propaganda going on.
I mean, they said urban renewal. They mentioned it, but they did it like in the positive sense, but they didn't actually talk about the actual effects.
So, yeah, we know that the Rondo neighborhood right here was directly affected by this whole program of urban renewal and driving highways through communities, Black communities and communities of color across the country. And so here in Rondo that, we've talked about in the past, the devastating effects that's had and the attempts to kind of rebuild and looking to the future, what can we do? And Pierre, you've been a resident of Rondo. You've lived here. I mean, you grew up here. You weren't here when the highway was built, right?
No, I was not born yet.
But you felt the effects. And what is it like to have a highway right kind of in the middle of this neighborhood?
Yeah. When you're a kid, it's like, oh, that's the freeway. Like, that's the freeway.
It's just there.
Right,
it's just there. Yeah.
You grow up and get more information. Like, oh, that's a no way. Like, that's a slave way. That's a
that's
a way. That's not a freeway. That's a way to displace family members. That's a way to destroy a community. That's a way to gentrify. Right. I might want to go slow. Than I used to. Right. Than I used to. Not maybe this interstate thing is not as great as it seems, right? So when you're young, you don't have the information. It's just a part of life. And I think that's one of the biggest impacts that it's had on my generation is that displacement was normalized. This gentrification, this urban renewal, these things are normalized. Oh, this is just life. But for my parents and for my parents' parents and their parents, what we experienced as normalized, very traumatic, because my grandmother experienced a Rondo that was very connected. She came from Money, Mississippi with her family. And they were very integrated in the community. And so when there was this construction of the freeway, there was a deconstruction of integration, and the community is still trying to, when you see that, then you can see why the community is still splintered in a sense and in a way, why things just don't feel like you think they could or they should feel. And because when there's an intentional, and I'm a very spiritual person, when there's an intention to sever a community for your own means, you're severing the spirit of that community. If you never address that, then how can you expect the spirit of the community to heal? And if the spirit of the community hasn't healed, then how will that impact the community members? How will that impact the visitors? How will that impact the newborns? And so what we see today because of this way that was made to make travel between the interstate a lot more convenient for a few, but at the expense of many.
Right. Yeah. And it's like just trying to spread everything out and cater to,
because who would need the freeway the most? It wouldn't be those who actually live in the community.
It would be from people outside traveling through to get to where they need to go.
Just getting through. Yeah. It's a drive-through. It's a drive-through. It's a real-life drive-through.
Right, because these communities had everything they needed. Yeah. And then everything they needed just went away with the highway. And they're like, hey, use the highway to get where you need to go.
Yeah. Right. Fast car, fast food, drive-through.
That's what it is. Yeah. So you've seen in your lifetime some newer public infrastructure transportation projects that have come about in St. Paul. Would you say that those have been more positive, or is it still falling back into this same pattern of not really listening to the community or taking into account actually what's best for the people who live here in Rondo?
I remember waking up and there was just this rally of artists that was like, we have to raise our voice against this green line that is coming through St. Paul. Yeah. It is coming, and our voices do not matter up until this point. We're going to have to make our voices matter because they're not accounting for our voices and whether or not we want a green line to go through St. Paul.
So this is like a light rail right here.
Right,
It's a light rail.
it's like up the street.
Yeah,
It's
we
right
are
next to us.
It's on University Avenue and right here.
We're a block away from it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and it's there. And so I remember what university was like before the Green Line, and I remember what it was like during the Green Line, and it was devastating to see, because you had there's a lot of businesses that were FUBU, for us, by us, right? And they're just not there anymore. Right. You noticed during the construction of the Green Line that businesses shut down. They had to shut down. They were forced to. And then you see these other businesses take their place.
That are not from the community.
And just like, where are you popping up at? Where are you coming from? Who gave you this grant to build this? Where happened to the candies? There's just certain things that were just the staple in the community. You realize, oh, your people don't run this block anymore. Like you can see, oh, that's us. There was that's us feeling to the businesses that were up and down University, and now that's very few and far in between. And then you think about, okay, that transforming decades later into a couple decades later, that transforming into now these housing developments that are not for us, because if you take into account, on average, how much us makes compared to what the actual cost of living. Last time I checked, I think it was like $64,000.
The cost of living.
The cost of living in Minnesota to be comfortable.
Right.
And the average black family is making $32,000.
That's half.
Yes, less than, that's like half. Like we're making less than, we're at half of what is needed to live. So we're not living comfortable. Pretty much. We're just not, on average, we're not living comfortable. And so then you have these housing projects that we can't afford. So who are they for? Not us.
Right.
Yeah. So what they're gonna do is they're gonna push us out, but that raises the property value of the others around. So that goes up there. Those taxes go up. That mortgage goes up. That rent goes up. So then we get pushed out, and then you see this is how you gentrify the hood. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, and they built a whole stadium for soccer.
Oh, yeah. I forgot to mention that because none of us go to that. I'm sorry. I don't even know who what's the soccer team name?
Minneapolis United?
The United?
United something? It's trying to be like Manchester United, but like Minneapolis United. It's not funny at all.
And they've been there for like, what, a couple years now?
Yeah.
I guess, right? Where's Foot Locker? That's my question. I remember Foot Locker and Dots. Where's Dots and Foot Locker? Right? We had a dollar store. We knew everything in there was $1.25, but still, that was our dollar store.
Yeah,
right? And we had we had a bowling alley right next. We had Foot Locker, Dots, Payless. Then we had the bowling alley right there. Then you could go to Cub Foods. You get your food. You can play ball. You can get some new shoes. And if you need a quick outfit, Dots got. Come on, bro. It's not there no more. Then there was. Dang, man. That was so long ago, bro. Yeah, that's
crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah. Thank you for watching our podcast. If you like what you see, give us a like, hit that subscribe button, and click that notification bell to get notified when we put out new podcast episodes.